The big bark, listen up dog owners, it's for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host Darragh and canine co-hosts Bruno and Milly. The Big Bark.
Hello and a very big welcome back to the Big Bark Podcast. This is the podcast, the number one rated doggy podcast in Ireland that brings you the latest news from the canine world, and it is absolutely crazy about all breeds of dogs. We love everything from your little chihuahuas to your Bichon Frisers, right up to your Rottweilers and your Saint Bernards and your Bernese mountain dogs. I was about to say Saint Bernese there. I'm tired, it's been a long day. So, we've had a great few weeks. Over the last few weeks, we've had some wonderful episodes, from our episode with Dog Friendly Ireland to our various trainers that we've had on recently, including Carrie Hoad and Maeve Humphreys, as well as having Danny Brady on recently, talking about all things force-free grooming. And last week we had Samantha Rawson on with us. Now, Samantha, I just want to talk to me about this episode for a minute. Samantha's episode was absolutely fantastic content, but unfortunately, as things happen from time to time, the audio quality was absolutely, utterly crap. Which is no fault of my wonderful PodTrack P4 or my skills that I developed over the last year in editing audio. It was actually because of Zoom's, the Zoom conference and software that we use to record remote interviews, and unless you have a really stable connection on that, the audio quality can come out pretty terrible at times. So I would like to apologise to everyone just for the audio being really, really bad. But look, let's move on from that. We've had great feedback. We've had wonderful reviews on our podcast. We've hit the number one spot 4 weeks in a row running in the podcast charts for pets and animals in Ireland, on the Apple podcast charts, that is. No idea what the story is with Spotify podcast charts. I don't even know if they actually exist or not. But all the same, let's move on from that and let's focus on today's episode. Today we have the wonderful Jenny and Rosie from Haven Rescue in County Tipperary. Haven do such amazing work for all animals across the Tipperary region, and we are delighted to have Jenny and Rosie joining us right now on the line. Jenny, Rosie, welcome to the Big Bark.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
No problem. So, okay, guys, tell me first of all a small bit about Haven Rescue. Give us a bit of background for people who don't know about you. When did it start, and such as how many people are involved, and what kind of animals do you mainly care for?
Okay, so the Haven Rescue was started in, was it 2017? Yeah. In 2017, so nearly 5 years ago now. So there's a couple of people involved, and there's about 6 people in the very beginning, and those 6 people are still with us. So we're foster based, so everything is out in a foster home where we can fit them into a foster home. So we have 2 canine behaviourists on the team as well, Rosie and Brian. So the dogs come into us first. They're surrendered from just people just wanting to get rid of their dogs, or people that are moving house and can't keep them. And we work a lot with the pounds, all the pounds across Ireland. So we would take an awful lot of dogs from Meath Dog Pound, from Roscommon, from Longford, Waterford, Limerick, everywhere and anywhere. So the dogs then, they come to us. So first port of call is they go to the vets to get whatever little bits and pieces they need done. So usually they go in and they get their neutering, they get their vaccinations, they get their microchips, and they get their worms and their worming and defleeing. And then depending on what type of dog it is and what foster homes we have available, they'll go out to a foster home or they'll go to one of our behaviourists to be assessed first. So they kind of recover there for a couple of days, see what they're like, see what they like, what they don't like, if they're getting on with other dogs or if they're not. And then they're kind of matched out to a foster home. So we have about 20 foster homes, kind of give or take, at any one time. So nobody gets paid, everyone's a volunteer. So they bring the dogs into their own home, they get them used to being in the house, being around other dogs, out walking, trips in the car and stuff like that. and then they kind of build a little bit of a profile for them, and then they start to be advertised. So they go up on our social medias, so Instagram and Facebook, and then we try and find them homes. So we would deal an awful lot in kind of lurchers and greyhounds. So sometimes we have to work with rescues in the UK. So we work with 3, Greyhound Protection UK, Norfolk Greyhound Rescue, and Almost Home. So the guys there, they can take some dogs off us when they have space, and they find them homes. And then we work with our rescues in Sweden and Italy, and we even sent dogs to America last year. So they're kind of scattered all over the world now. And yeah, that's about it. I suppose it started very small, and I kind of got very big very quickly. So at any one time now, at the minute, we could have 40 or 50 or 60 dogs at a time. So our food bill is about 150 to 200 a week. So it doesn't take long tottling up that. Then we do have to use kennels. We use overflow kennels. Just because we've so many dogs at the minute, and then some kind of can't. They need a little bit more time to kind of decompress from the situation that they've come out of. And we find kennels can be kind of a little bit useful like that. They can just kind of chill out for a little while until you try and bring them into a home. Because sometimes it's just too much to try and get a dog that has come from a situation and try and fit them into a house straight away. They just can't cope with it. So God, our kennel bill could be, I don't want to say.
It stands at 2.7 there at the minute.
Yeah. So it'll be about 300-400 a week, which is a lot of money. So yeah, that's kind of about it. We take everything and anything. So I think the smallest dog we've had is a 1.7 kilo Chihuahua, and then the biggest dog we've had is a 50 and 60 kilo Greyhound. So we do the very tiny to the very large. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's very good. And I suppose, every rescue over the last 15 months, I imagine you've been really hit by COVID.
Yeah, I suppose COVID hit us. It hit back whenever it hit, back last March. So we had an awful lot of dogs that had been booked to go to Italy and had been booked to go to Sweden. And obviously then, because everything shut down, those dogs couldn't travel. So we ended up having to use kennels. Then all those dogs went out to kennels. And at one point, I think we had nearly 40 dogs in kennels, as well as dogs in foster homes, because they were all booked and their families were waiting for them. And obviously they couldn't travel. And then we kind of got a little bit of a relief, and those dogs were able to travel. And then I suppose it came the surge of people just, give me a dog, any dog. I don't care if it's a St. Bernard and I live in the highest apartment in Dublin, or if I live in the middle of nowhere and I want the tiniest Chihuahua. And people just went absolutely crazy, just anything. We've put up pictures of probably Bridget and her puppies there the last couple of weeks, and we were just getting message after message saying, I want one, just book me one. Just give me a puppy, any puppy. I suppose people haven't some people did put in the research, but then some people didn't. They just went out and grabbed anything that they could. So we're kind of bracing ourselves for the impact of all those dogs starting to come into us. And we've already seen it. We've seen Benji was a collie that was in Carlow Kilkenny Pound. He came to us at 9 months old. His family just didn't want him anymore. 9 months, had gotten him at the start of the pandemic. Never did anything with him. Just had him in the house, had him in the back garden. Never socialised him with other dogs. And he was hard work when he came. No one else would take him from the pound. He was hard work to get going around with other dogs. He would bark and in your face, and he was a really mad, active, high energy dog that just had literally nothing done with him whatsoever. But he travelled to Sweden there a couple of weeks. Well, last week or the week before, he flew out of Dublin Airport, so he's getting on great in Sweden. He has an amazing life ahead of him. But he is one dog not going to be the last dog, is the victim of the pandemic, of people just not thinking. Collies require a huge amount of exercise, and some people just don't give them. We had Mila as well, who was a collie springer. Again, another 9 months out the door. Once her cuteness had left her, she was gone. Ozzy is another one, a bull lurcher. We've had him for just over nearly a year now. He's been in kennels. He's mad active, and he had literally no training when he came. He was a puppy, a really, really cute puppy. All puppies are really cute. but was left to get away with blue murder. So he has no problem jumping on your head and trying to be carried around on the top of your head, because that's the way he was treated as a puppy. And now it's the rescues that are having to pick up pieces of it because the novelty wore off, and it was very easy for a family to get rid of him. But we're the ones left trying to clean up after it. And it's only the start of it as well.
Yeah, definitely agree. And it's something like that. I suppose I've seen a lot myself, talking with Tim Kirby from Pet Bond over recent months, and I think even with Pete Wedderburn as well, been talking a lot to them about this. And it is something that we've seen throughout COVID. Like, people didn't think of the pandemic will eventually end. And all they thought of was, I want a puppy to keep me occupied now. They never thought of when they're going to go back to like a working environment and what's going to happen to that puppy then.
Yeah, and we found out when we were getting contacted, like we were getting between 30 and 40 messages a day for people applying for dogs. And our first question was always going to happen, what's your plan post-COVID? And most people were like, well, I'm going back to work. And when we put the question to them, what are you going to do with the dog? Most people didn't know. They just hadn't thought about it. They hadn't thought about, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be here for the next year or 6 months or till after Christmas. But what happens after Christmas? Do you know, that kind of way? Now, and some people got very irate with us when we came back and we said to them, no, like, you have to have a plan in action. Like, do you know, there's loads of facilities now, dog parks, and there's dog sitters, and there's doggy daycare and all this, or there's the grandparents, or there's the neighbour down the road. You know, people would need to have a plan
in action and
ready to go for when you go back to work. What are you going to do when life kicks back in and normality starts again?
Yeah, and to be honest, like, I suppose that's something that, like I said, a lot of people haven't even thought at what's going to happen, like, post-COVID. And I think it's not just rescues we've seen a huge demand. Like, if you look as well at, I suppose, all the breeders that are out there, and I'd be one, like, and especially on the show, be one for always look at a shelter first. There's plenty of dogs who are looking for their forever homes. They have been in a shelter for, say, 9-12 months or even longer in some cases. But it's been really strange. You've seen this, I suppose, this demand for dogs that's been there that we've never seen before. And with breeders especially, it's driving. It's hard to describe. It's like a price war nearly at this stage. The price, like, I've seen like some Labradors, like I have 2 labs here myself, and I've seen some Labradors online that are costing like 3,000-4,000 now. It's insane.
The prices. Yeah. But most of these, and most of them are puppies, they're only getting a first vax, and some of them aren't even microchipped, you know, and it's been lost since 13, whatever, 24.
A long time.
Yeah, that all dogs have to be so microchips, whereas it just wasn't happening. But yet people are willing to go out to spend 2,000 to 4,000 on these puppies.
And they will probably be the first people that will contact us and say, well, you have to take this dog on Tuesday because I need it gone out of my house because I go back to work. But yeah. I suppose an awful lot of those puppies as well, they were taken off their mums very young. Like, puppies should stay with their mums until they're 12 weeks old at a minimum. And we've seen it here. Puppies, we got a litter of lurcher puppies like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and one had been taken away at 6 weeks, and then we managed to get the mum and the rest of them at, I think there were 9-10 weeks. And that puppy that had been taken away at 6 weeks actually came back when we were taking the other ones. But you could see the complete difference of he had been split from his family at 6 weeks and the puppies that were still with their mum. Like, they were complete chalk and cheese.
Just the socialisation is completely different.
And even that family still struggle with his socialisation now because of that extra 3 weeks. It wouldn't have done any harm for him to stay with his mum for another 3 weeks. But the impacts for the rest of his life are there now. And I suppose people are going to have to start dealing with that as well. Puppies that weren't left long enough with their mums.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to talk to you about, you mentioned that a lot of dogs go to the UK and you had one dog that went to Sweden. So this is something that's like been really seen, especially like with lurchers and greyhounds over the last number of years, that the quality of life that they're getting from going to these European countries, like, rather than I suppose, rather than being adopted here in Ireland, the quality of life seems so much higher for them over there.
Yeah, I suppose in Sweden there's not pounds in Sweden. Like, it doesn't happen that your neighbour has their dog chained out in the back garden for 6 months and you drive past and, oh, that's just Joe Bloggs, he always does that. Like, that doesn't happen in Sweden. Families, like, it's very rare, I suppose, to find a rescue dog in Sweden. Like, they have waiting lists, and families, I think, they think about it an awful lot longer out there.
Just the welfare here in Ireland, there's nobody to enforce it, I suppose, as much
like,
as...
There probably is quite a good law, but there's just the enforcement of it isn't there.
Yeah, and that's not dissing anybody in, like, your local dog wardens. They have too big of an area to cover.
Like, one person can't cover the area.
You know, I think there's 2 dog wardens for Tipperary, and the size of Tipperary, like, it's not possible for him. If something happens in Cashel one day and something happens in
another day, like,
there's no possible way for him to cover that ground. So unfortunately, the resources are not there just to get in and cover everything that needs to be done for animal welfare.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, if you look at it, like there are laws that are looking to introduce. Like, if you look even up till recently, an animal like a dog, like a cat or anything was considered a piece of property. They weren't actually considered living beings.
Yeah, they weren't.
So, like, we had Dr. Sharon Alston on there last year on the show, back last August, and she was working with, I think it was a TD down in County Wexford, to try and get legislation pushed through. And I think some of that legislation has actually gone through, where dogs are no longer actually considered this piece of property anymore, which is great to see, but we have a long way to go here in Ireland.
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah. But a lot of people still see it like there's no problem with next door's dog being chained. Do you know, that whereas in the UK or Sweden or any like them countries, that does not happen. So it's a pity that Ireland won't come forward and come out of dark ages around animal welfare and be a little bit more proactive about these things.
Definitely. And talking about animal welfare, like, it's supposed we see a huge amount of cruelty cases in Ireland. I know I saw one, I think it was on your own Instagram story not so long ago, I think it was last week. A case of one of these sulkies up in, was it Tullamore, I think, and going down the wrong way down a one-way street, and it was only a fall, I believe, if I'm right, and the sulky turned over, and the 2 little, I suppose, call them what you will, hooligans, thugs, is what I call them, who have no respect for animal life, and they just took off.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's the problem as well. They're so easy to commandeer those little horses. Like, they're being bred out of every single mare that can be put in foal. They're just bred, and they have no regard for, what am I going to do with it? Like, even if you drive down through Tipperary, you see fields of, like, horses just breeding everywhere. And I suppose, like, those kids, they shouldn't be allowed. Like, it's dangerous for them, it's dangerous for the horse, and it's dangerous for the person that's coming against them in a car, because those horses are so young. Their bones aren't properly formed. They shouldn't be out beating their legs off tarmac, trotting up and down. Like, it wrecks their tendons, it wrecks their hoofs, it wrecks them for the rest of their life. And they're only babies themselves. Like, they don't understand about cars coming to them, and they get scared, and they can do serious damage to themselves. They can do serious damage to oncoming cars, and they can have the possibility of killing people. Like, they're animals. They are heavy, they're big, and they can cause an awful lot of damage to people.
Yeah, and children being in charge of them is just like, there's nobody there to stop them or to take charge and say this is not right and this is not what should be done.
Like, a child doesn't have the strength to pull up one of those horses, no matter how young the horse is. They don't physically have the strength to manage what they're running up and down the road. Like, it's ridiculous.
And I think a lot of that comes back to, again, the enforcement of the legislation that's there. It's
exactly. I suppose it's very hard for, if in an ideal world, if they were spotted out on the road and the horse isn't chipped, it should be lifted there and then. But where's the facilities to do that? Where's the manpower to do that? In an ideal world, that horse should be gone. But where do you put them? Or how do you cope with it?
Exactly, and like, look, I suppose like you always hear like the Gardaí can't seize a horse unknown. They have to have like an animal inspector there with them,
Yeah, like
and
they can't fit a horse in the back of the squad car. Like, so what are you going to do? Where are you going to
exactly,
put them? And there's
yeah,
just not the manpower there to lift it and go.
yeah. And I suppose the bigger issue too is like when you see children as young as like 9, 10 on these horse traps, and they're like you won't put them behind the wheel of a car. So why they out on the road?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
the car has airbags. Like, they have
yeah.
nothing up on them.
Exactly. So I want to talk to you next a bit about like okay, so I did see on your Instagram that you have a big GoFundMe which was for your vet bills, and funding and obviously fundraising like for any animal charity is a massive thing. But talk to me a bit about the GoFundMe campaigns that you have run at the moment.
So we have one big one that was set up kind of at the beginning of the pandemic last year. We had vet bills of about 25,000 that were just sitting there that they just weren't going down. They were getting higher and higher and higher. So I suppose that was started, and that one is nearly finished. So we've nearly reached the target of 25,000. But all that money has already cleared, has been going to clear the vets. So I suppose I think our current bill at the minute is, as of last week, it was about 10,500. And I suppose every week we, depending on what dogs go on, we put about maybe 1,500-1,600 on the bill every single week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's an awful lot of money, and that's all going well. Like last week, Eask was a dog that came in, and her teeth were so rotten she needed to get her jaw broke and get wires placed in her jaw. So that was an unexpected cost that had to go on the bill and build the bill up even more. I suppose there's 5 dogs going in tomorrow. You're looking at another, I'd say, about maybe 1,000, 1,500, depending on how good they are or how good they're not. So yeah, I suppose it is a bit of a worry and it's a bit of a stress, I suppose, when you can't go do your pub quizzes and your raffle nights and your table quizzes and stuff like that. Like there's
that we would have been doing before. Like we would have
been. You can't do a book collection. We used to always do a book collection inside in Rossgrate. You can't do that. So that's 2 years of book collections
or
down.
a church gate collection or something. Like all our previous fundraising, there has been no way of doing it. So
there's a couple of fundraisers. I suppose a couple of people kind of started doing GoFundMes and stuff. People that adopted dogs from us. There's a girl, Lucy. She does makeup. She ran a GoFundMe. She raffled off some Sosumi pallets and stuff. She raised nearly €900. So that will be coming off the bill this week. So yeah, I suppose it's just a constant trying to juggle how to do it in the new COVID kind of world, but still trying to raise money at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, you're doing absolutely fantastic work, and we'll keep an eye on your Instagram page. We'll keep sharing for you, and we'll make sure that we keep raising the awareness for you as well.
Looking for homes there, so if anybody is interested in a black greyhound, because we have lots of them at the minute, or any dogs, just
send them our direction.
Fantastic. Right? And how do people get in touch with you?
Probably our main is our Facebook page. A couple of ads on it, as Jenny said earlier, everybody works full time, so the page has there 4 admins, so everybody, people are keeping an eye to it nearly the whole time. So we would ask people to give a shout to the Facebook page or the Instagram page. Also, there's a number up on it. Obviously, we work full time, so if we can't answer the phone, we nearly always come back to you on a Facebook message or something like that. But yeah, give the page a like and give it a share.
Fantastic. Jenny and Rosie from Haven Rescue in County Tipperary, thank you both so much for joining me on the Big Bark. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you both this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that's all the time that we have today. So thanks to everyone for listening to this, and thanks to Jenny and Rosie for joining us again. Wonderful to have an absolutely incredible rescue like Haven on the show. And if there's any other, I suppose, rescues or any other pet related businesses or professionals out there who want to get involved with the show, be sure to email us on studio@thebigbark.ie. If you are looking to get more involved with the show itself, and maybe come on, like if you have a passion for dogs, and come on as a guest co-host, or if you'd like to get involved in the show, like more in the long run as well, anyone who wants to get involved in any way, email us studio@thebigbark.ie. We are always open to talking to anybody who loves doggies, and like, look, we're all crazy about our dogs here. And well, yeah, that's basically all there is to today's show. So be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and on Twitter. You'll find us at The Big Bear Podcast on all of those. You'll find us on TikTok at The Big Bear Podcast, or find all our previous episodes on Spotify, on iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast. And you'll find them all under the Big Bark Dog Podcast there, because we had to be a little bit more specific to get us to rise a bit more on the ranks. Great old optimization there, you know. I know some of you listening have no idea what that even means. But I'm going to stop rambling on now, because I tend to do a lot of this and I don't want to do too much of it today. But all I can say is, have an absolutely fantastic week and give your doggy, as always, lots of cuddles. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. No idea who the guest is yet, but we'll figure that out as we go. Take care, everybody, and have a great week.
The Big Bark, listen up dog owners, is for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host Darragh and canine co-hosts Bruno and Milly. The Big Bark.